Krishna. Welcome to Srimad, where we are continuing reading Srimad Bhagavatam, 15 canto, entitled Pandava's Retired Time today. We are starting at verse number 40. As always, we recite Mahima Stotra. Sarva Shastrati Piyusham, Sarva Vidaika Satpalam, Sarva Siddhantas Radnadyam, Sarva Lokaika Drikpadam. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths. You are the only giver of sight to all of the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Pranam, Srimad Bhagavata Prabhu, Kaditvam Toditaditya, Shri Krishna Parivartitam. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Shri Krishna. Paramananda Patnaya, Prema Vakshakshayate, Sarvanda Sarvasevaya, Shri Krishna Namostame. I bow down to you who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Shri Krishna himself. Marika Bandha Matsangi, Mat Guru Mat Mahadana, Mat Nishtayaka Mat Bhagya, Madananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu Sadutadayin, Adi Nicho Chataraka, Adamunchakada Chinman, Prema Hrit Kantayos Puram. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice of pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 So we're continuing reading from verse 40 onwards. You have time, can you just put the reverb down? Just put the reverb down. It says reverb.
I don't know what that is.
It says on the bass, it's reverb. It sounds like it's huge space. Yeah, on the second channel. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Boo. Hare Krishna. It's okay. Translation. Maharaj Yudhishthira at once relinquished all his garments, belt and ornaments of the royal order and became completely disinterested and unattached to everything. Report. To become purified of material contamination is a necessary qualification for becoming one of the associates of the Lord. No one can become an associate of the Lord who can go back to Godhead without such purification. Maharaj Yudhishthira, therefore, to become spiritually pure, at once gave up his royal opulence, relinquishing his royal dress and garments. The kashaya, or saffron loincloth of a sannyasi, indicates freedom from all attractive material garments, and thus he changed his dress accordingly. He became disinterested in his kingdom and family, and thus became free from all material contamination or material designation. People are generally attached to various kinds of designations, the designations of family, society, country, occupation, wealth, position, and many others. As long as one is attached to such designations, he is considered materially impure. The so-called leaders of man in the modern age are attached by national consciousness, but they do not know that such false consciousness is also another designation of the materially conditioned soul. One has to relinquish such designations before one can become eligible to go back to Godhead. Foolish people adore such men who die in national consciousness, but here is an example of Maharaj Yudhishthira, a royal king who prepared himself to leave this world without such national consciousness. And yet, he is remembered even today because he was a great pious king, with the personality of Godhead Sri Rama. And because people of the world were dominated by such pious kings, they were happy in all respects, and it was quite possible for such great emperors to rule the world. Text 41. Then he amalgamated all the sense organs into the mind, then the mind into life, life into breathing, his total existence into the embodiment of the five elements, and his body into death. Then, as pure self, he became free from the material conception of life. Purport. Maharaj Yudhishthira, like his brother Arjuna, began to concentrate and gradually became freed from all material bondage. First, he concentrated all the actions of the senses and amalgamated them into the mind, or in other words, he turned his mind toward the transcendental service of the Lord. He prayed that since all material activities are performed by the mind in terms of actions and reactions of the material senses, and since he was going back to Godhead, the mind would wind up its material activities and be turned towards the transcendental service to the Lord. There was no longer a need for material activities. Actually, the activities of the mind cannot be stopped, for they are the reflection of the eternal soul. But the quality of the activities can be changed from matter to the transcendental service of the Lord. The material color of the mind is changed when one washes it from contaminations of life breathing, and thereby frees it from the contamination of repeated birth and death, and situates it in pure spiritual life. All is manifested by the temporary embodiment of the material body, which is a production of the mind at the time of death. And if the mind is purified by practice of transcendental loving service to the Lord, and is constantly engaged in the service of the lotus feet of the Lord, there is no more chance of the mind's producing another material body after death. It will be freed from absorption in material contamination. The pure soul will be able to return home back to Godhead. Text number 42. Thus annihilating the gross body of five elements into the three qualitative modes of material nature, he merged them in one nescience and then absorbed that nescience in the self, Brahman, which is inexhaustible in all circumstances. Purport. All that is manifested in the material world is the product of the Mahatattva Avyakta, and things that are visible in our material vision are nothing but combinations and permutations of such variegated material products. But the living entity is different from such material products. It is due to the living entity's forgetfulness of his eternal nature as eternal servitor of the Lord, and his false conception of being a so-called Lord of the material nature, that he is obliged to enter into the existence of false sense enjoyment. Thus a concomitant generation of material energies is the principal cause of the mind's being materially affected. Thus the gross body of five elements is produced. Maharaj Yudhishthira reversed the action and merged the five elements of the body in the three modes of material nature. The qualitative distinction of the body as being good, bad, or mediocre is extinguished, and again the qualitative manifestations become merged in the material energy, which is produced from a full sense of the pure living being. When one is thus inclined to become an associate of the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, in one of the planets of the spiritual state, especially in the Loka Vrindavan, one has to think always that he is different from the material and realize the pure spirit, Brahman, qualitatively equal with the Supreme Brahman, Parameshwara. Maharaj Yudhishthira, after distributing his Parikshit and Vajra, did not think himself emperor of the world or head of the Kuru dynasty. This sense of freedom from material relations, as well as freedom from the material engagement of the gross and subtle and circumstances, makes one free to act as the servitor of the Lord, even though one is in the material world. This stage is called the Jivan Mukta stage, or the liberated stage, even in the material world. That is the process of ending material existence. Not think that he is Brahman, but must act like Brahman. One who only thinks himself Brahman is an impersonalist, and one who acts like Brahman is the pure devotee. Act like Brahman. Text 43. After that, Maharaj Yudhishthira dressed himself in torn clothing, gave up eating all solid foods, voluntarily became dumb, and let his hair hang loose. All this combined to make him an urchin or madman with no occupation. He did not depend on his brothers for anything, and just like a dead man, he heard nothing. Purport. Thus, being freed from all external affairs, he had nothing to do with imperial life or family prestige, and for all practical purposes, he posed himself exactly like an inert mad urchin and did not speak of material affairs. He had no dependence on his brothers, who had all along been helping him. This stage of complete independence from everything is also called the purified stage of fearlessness. Hare Krishna. Text 44. He then started towards the north, treading the path accepted by his forefathers and great men, to devote himself completely to the thought of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and he lived in that way wherever he went. Purport. It is understood from this verse that Maharaj Yudhishthira followed in the footsteps of his forefathers and the great devotees of the Lord. We have discussed many times before that the system of Varnashram Dharma was strictly followed by the inhabitants of the world, specifically by those who inhabited the Aryavarta province of the world, emphasizes the importance of leaving all household connections at a certain stage of life. The training and education was so imparted, and thus a respectable person like Maharaj Yudhishthira had to leave all family connection for self-realization and going back to God. No king or respectable gentleman would continue family life till the end, because that was considered suicidal and against the interest of the perfection of human life. In order to be free from all family encumbrances and devote oneself 100% in the devotional service of Lord Krishna, this system is always recommended for everyone because it is the path of authority. The Lord instructs in the Bhagavad Gita 1862 that one must become a devotee of the Lord at least at the last stage of one's life. A sincere soul of the Lord like Maharaj Yudhishthira must abide by this instruction of the Lord for his own interest. The specific words Brahma Param indicate Lord Shri Krishna. This is corroborated in the Bhagavad Gita 10:13 by Arjuna with reference to great authorities like Asita, Devala, Narada and Vyasa. Thus Maharaj Yudhishthira, while leaving home for the north, constantly remembered Lord Shri Krishna within himself, following in the footsteps of his forefathers, as well as the great devotees of all times. Text 45. The younger brothers of Maharaj Yudhishthira observed that the age of Kali had already arrived throughout the world, and that the citizens of the kingdom were already affected by irreligious practice. Therefore, they decided to follow in the footsteps of their elder brother. Purport. The younger brothers of Maharaj Yudhishthira were already obedient followers of the great emperor, and they had sufficiently been trained to know the ultimate goal of life. They therefore decidedly followed their eldest brother in rendering devotional service to Lord Shri Krishna. According to the principles of Sanatana Dharma, one must retire from family life after half the duration of life is finished and must engage himself in self-realization. But the question of engaging oneself is not always decided. Sometimes retired men are bewildered about how to engage themselves for the last days of life. Here is a decision by authorities like the Pandavas. All of them engaged themselves in favorably culturing the devotional service of the Lord Shri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of God. According to Swami Sridhar, Dharma, Artha, Kama and Moksha, or fruitive activities, philosophical speculations and salvation, as conceived by several persons, are not the ultimate goal of life. They are more or less practiced by persons who have no information of the ultimate goal of life. The ultimate goal of life is already indicated by the Lord himself in the Bhagavad Gita 1864, and the Pandavas were intelligent enough to follow it without hesitation. 46. They all had performed all the principles of religion, and as a result rightly decided that the lotus feet of the Lord Shri Krishna are the supreme goal of all. Therefore they meditated upon his feet without interruption. Purport. In the Bhagavad Gita 7.28, the Lord says that only those who have done pious deeds in previous lives and have become freed from the results of all impious acts can concentrate upon the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. Pandavas, not only in this life but also in their previous lives, had always performed the supreme pious work, and thus they are ever free from all the reactions of impious work. It is quite reasonable, therefore, that they concentrated their minds upon the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. According to Sri Vishwanatha Chakravarti, Dharma, Artha, Kama and Moksha principles are accepted by persons who are not free from the results of impious action. Such persons affected with the contaminations of the above four principles cannot at once accept the lotus feet of the Lord in the spiritual sky. The Vaikuntha world is situated far beyond the material sky. The material sky is under the management of Durga Devi, or the material energy of the Lord, but the Vaikuntha world is managed by the personal energy of the Lord. 47 and 48. Double verse today's. Thus, by pure consciousness, due to constant devotional remembrance, they attain the spiritual sky, which is ruled over by the Supreme Narayana, Lord Krishna. This is attained only by those who meditate upon the one Supreme Lord without deviation. This abode of the Lord Sri Krishna, known as Goloka Vrindavan, cannot be attained by persons who are absorbed in the material conception of life. But the Pandavas, being completely washed of all material contamination, attain that abode in their very same bodies. Perfect. According to Srila Jiva Goswami, a person freed from the three modes of material qualities, namely goodness, passion and ignorance, and situated in transcendence, can reach the highest perfection of life without change of body. Srila Sanatana Goswami, in his Hari Bhakti Vilas, says that a person, whatever he may be, can attain the perfection of a twice-born Brahmana by undergoing the spiritual disciplinary actions under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, exactly as a chemist can turn gunmetal into gold by chemical manipulation. It is therefore the actual guidance that matters in the process of becoming a Brahmana, even without a change of body, or in going back to Godhead without a change of body. Srila Jiva Goswami remarks that the word he, not I, he, used in this connection positively affirms this truth, and there is no doubt about this factual position. Bhagavad Gita 14:26 also affirms this statement of Srila Jiva Goswami when the Lord says that anyone who executes devotional service systematically without deviation can attain the perfection of Brahman by surpassing the contamination of the three modes of material nature. And when the Brahman perfection is still more advanced by the self-same execution of devotional service, there is no doubt at all that one can attain the supreme spiritual planet, Goloka Vrindavan, without change of body, as we have already discussed in connection with the Lord's returning to his abode without a change of body. Text 49. Vidura, while on pilgrimage, left his body at Prabhas. Because he was absorbed in thought of Lord Krishna, he was received by the denizens of Pitriloka planet, where he returned to his original post. Purport. The difference between the Pandavas and Vidura is that the Pandavas are eternal associates of the Lord, the personality of Godhead, whereas Vidura is one of the administrative demigods in charge of the Pitriloka planet and is known as Yamaraj. Men are afraid of Yamaraj because it is he only who awards punishment to the miscreants of the material world, but those who are devotees of the Lord have nothing to fear from him. To the devotees he is a cordial friend, but to the non-devotees he is fear personified. As we have already discussed, it is understood that Yamaraj was cursed by Manduka Muni to be degraded as a Shudra, and therefore Vidura was an incarnation of Yamaraj. As an eternal servitor of the Lord, he displayed his devotional activities very ardently and lived a life of a pious man, so much so that a materialistic man like Dhritarashtra also got salvation by his instruction. So by his pious activities in devotional service of the Lord, he He was able to always remember the lotus feet of the Lord, and thus he became washed of all contamination of a Shudra-born life. At the end, he was again received by the denizens of Pitriloka and posted in his original position. The demigods are also associates of the Lord without personal touch, whereas the direct associates of the Lord are in constant personal touch with him. The Lord and his personal associates incarnate in many universes without cessation. The Lord remembers them all, whereas the associates are very minute parts and parcels of the Lord. They are apt to forget such incidents due to being infinitesimal. This is corroborated in the Bhagavad Gita 4:5. 50, verse number. Draupadi also saw that her husbands, without caring for her, came home. She knew well about Lord Vasudeva, Krishna, and both she and Subhadra became absorbed in thoughts of purport. When flying in an airplane, one cannot take care of other planes. Everyone has to take care of his own plane. If there is any danger, no other plane can help another in that condition. Similarly, at the end of life, when one has to go back home, back to Godhead, everyone has to take care of himself without help rendered by another. The help is, however, offered on the ground before flying. Similarly, the spiritual master, the father, the husband, and others can all render help during one's lifetime. But while crossing the sea, one has to take care of himself and utilize the instructions formally. Draupadi had 5 husbands, and no one asked Draupadi to come. Draupadi had to take care of herself without waiting for her great husbands. And because she was already trained, she at once took to concentration upon the lotus feet of Lord Vasudeva, the personality of Godhead. The wives also got the same result as their husbands in the same manner, that is to say, without changing their bodies. They both Draupadi and Subhadra, although her name is not mentioned herein, got the same result. None of them had to quit the body. 51. The subject of the departure of the sons of Pandu for the ultimate goal of life, back to God, is fully auspicious and is perfectly pure. Therefore, anyone who hears this narration with devotional faith certainly gains the devotional service of the Lord, the highest perfection of life. Purport. Srimad Bhagavatam is a narration about the personality of Godhead and the devotees of the Lord like the Pandavas. The narration of the personality of Godhead and his devotees is absolute in itself, and thus to hear it with a devotional attitude is to associate with the Lord and constant companions of the Lord. By the process of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, one can attain the highest perfection of life, namely going back home, back to God, without failure. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the first canto, 15th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled The Pandavas Retired Time. Okay, everyone, we finished on that chapter. So, you see now all the brothers of the Pandavas are left, after Krishna left. I just was remembered about this book that was, it's called Brilliant as the Sun, which is Bhagavatam. And the title for Bhagavatam, it's a retelling of Srimad Bhagavatam. And just like while waiting for John to come, I just want to read what we just read in a different form. This is by Krishna Dharma and Chintama and Dharma Dasi, his wife. So you can hear how it sounds in a different way. So only Krishna Dharma can write like this. So I'll just read a few from the same chapter, what we just read, the Pandavas departed. I'll read a few chapters. For some moments, Arjuna said nothing. Remembering the Lord's kindness, friendship, intimate, familiar relations, and his chariot driving, Arjuna was overwhelmed with feelings of separation. Composing himself with great effort, he began to speak. The Supreme Lord Krishna, who treated me as his dearest friend, has left me. I have just lost he whose absence for a moment would render all the worlds repulsive, like bodies without life. Because of his departure, my astounding power that amazed even the gods is also gone. Arjuna again broke down weeping. Yudhishthira stared at him in horrified silence. His other brothers had entered the court on hearing of Arjuna's return. They too looked shocked. Krishna gone? Their greatest well-wishing friend and beloved Lord. Weakened by the news, they stumbled to their seats, burying their faces in their hands. Once seated, Arjuna collected his thoughts and calmed himself. Taking a deep breath, he said, "By Krishna's grace, I overcame the world's monarchs to win the celestially beautiful Draupadi, succeeding in a near impossible test of arms. With him by my side, I defeated the gods in a battle and compelled the celestial architect Mayadanava to build the incomparable Mayasabha assembly house. And thanks to him, our brother Bhima was able to slay King Jarasandha, who had conquered thousands of other kings." Arjuna's brothers listened in stunned silence as he recalled the numerous times Krishna had saved them from catastrophe, particularly during the battle of Kurukshetra. The Kauravas' military strength was like an ocean in which dwelt many invincible shark-like fighters. It was insurmountable. Only because of Krishna's friendship was I able to cross it safely. By his mere glance, he withdrew those warriors' live duration. The Lord thus sapped the inspiration, power, enthusiasm from the prodigious martial array headed by Bhishma, Karna, Drona, Shali, and many other mighty heroes. Their arrangement was expert and insuperable, but Krishna neutralized it as he drove my chariot forward. The great generals, although directing unstoppable weapons at me, could not touch even a hair on my head. As he remembered his familiarity with Krishna, Arjuna trembled with grief. Surely it was only due to a lack of esteem for my Lord that I dared engage him as my chariot driver, for he is worshipped and offered service by the best of men who desire salvation. Krishna and I would eat, sleep, and pass our leisure hours together. I became so intimate with him that I would joke and playfully deride him, laughing when he spoke of his jewelry, saying, "Of course, my friend, of course." He never took offense and excused my audacity exactly as a friend would excuse or a lover. My dearest well-wisher, the best of all persons, my heart is broken and there is no sat in stunned silence for some time, thinking only of Krishna. Their grief from Krishna's separation intensified their loving feelings, and they forgot everything else, even the existence of their own bodies. Increasingly disconsolate as he explained how after Krishna's departure, he had been entrusted to bring the Lord's queens to Hastinapur. I was then attacked by a band of ruffian cowherds who kidnapped those ladies despite my attempt to protect them. I fought with the same Gandiva bow with which I overcame the gods. I rode upon the same chariot, carried the same inexhaustible quiver of arrows, and I am the same Arjuna who was respected and feared by all. Yet, in an instant, it has all been rendered useless belief, defeated by cowherd men. Arjuna told Yudhishthira of the fate of Krishna's family and dynasty. Since you asked me about the Yadus, I will tell you, though it pains me greatly. Intoxicated with the wine and afflicted by a Brahminical curse, they fought together with iron bars, hardly recognizing each other. Now all but 4 or 5 of them are dead and gone. His 4 brothers looked at him in horror, their mouths agape. How could the virtuous Yadus have killed one another? It was unthinkable. Bhima was the first to speak. Surely this was engineered by Krishna so that his associates would live with him. How else would the Lord's invisible sons and grandsons have been slain? No one on earth could have killed them. Arjuna agreed it had been Krishna's will. As in the ocean of bigger fish swallowed smaller, so the Lord engaged one Yadu to kill another, and then he too departed. Becoming silent, Arjuna began to meditate on the instructions Krishna had spoken at the commencement of the battle of Kurukshetra. Gradually he felt his sorrow subside, and his mind become free from illusion. Yudhishthira began to think of the future. He knew that in Krishna's absence, Kali's influence would spread, characterized by increasing avarice, falsehood, cheating, and violence. He remembered that Narada had instructed him to retire and follow his lord. Thus he made arrangements for Parikshit to be crowned as the next king of Hastinapur. He also installed Krishna's great-grandson Vajra as the king in Mathura. After enthroning Parikshit and Vajra, he and his brothers gave up their royal dress and put on simple cloth. Their minds fixed on attaining Krishna's eternal association, they set out from their city without telling anyone. They walked toward the mountains, oblivious to everything and appearing like madmen. In due course, they left this world and went to Krishna's eternal spiritual planet. Their wife Draupadi and Mother Kunti also fixed their minds on the Lord and ascended to his abode. As Sutta brought his narrative to an end, the sages sat in grief-stricken silence. Krishna and his entire family, as well as the mighty Pandavas and their relatives, were all gone. What a terrible loss for the earth! How unfortunate they were, not to have been able to see them. Sensing their mood, Sutta spoke, "The Lord and his pastimes are eternal, always visible to his pure devotees. Please also understand the Yadavas did not die in the same way a conditioned soul dies. Many of the gods entered the Yadav family to assist the Lord in killing the demonic kings. On the pretext of a fratricidal slaughter, those gods returned to their heavenly post. The Lord's eternal associates, however, returned with him to his never-ending pastimes in the eternal Dwarka. The Pandavas also reached him in their self-same spiritual bodies, in which they always serve him." Shonaka sat quietly, assimilating this information. It was not easy to understand Krishna's activities. After some moments he said, "Did Krishna take part in the fight between the Yadus? Did he, like them, also leave his body?" Sutta said, "Krishna never gave up his body. All his forms are eternal, sometimes manifest and sometimes not. Like a magician, he seems to relinquish his body, but he never factually has a material form. Will his apparent death not confuse people into thinking he is like them?" asked Shonaka. "The devotees are never confused," replied Sutta. "Only the atheists will take this episode as proof that Krishna is a mere mortal. This is Krishna's desire, for he never reveals himself to those who envy him. Thus, he creates an illusion of his departure." "It is not a happy illusion," stated Shonaka, smiling weakly. Sutta chuckled. "No, my friend, but grief for the departure of the Lord and his great devotees is another aspect of prema. Indeed, anyone who faithfully hears such subjects will attain pure devotion to Krishna." Loud shouts of approval arose from the sages. Shonaka said, "Pray tell us what happened after the Pandavas left and Parikshit assumed the throne." So that was the whole chapter. Just compiled this Krishna Dharma expertly. As you maybe noticed, the last part, you noticed this was like a little bit added there. It's not there in the Bhagavatam. So Krishna Dharma explains at the beginning in his introduction that this was added for the sake of it was added, few things were added from the commentaries of Vishwanath Chakravarti. It was compiled together with Prabhupada's purports and Vishwanath Chakravarti's purports, and few things for the sake of a story itself to be more fluid. So it makes it really nice reading. Hare Krishna. We just finished the 15th chapter. Continue. Then began to look options. Krishna
and to conveniently alter it again and again to serve some purpose. The rules and regulations were already set forth by great sages like Manu, Yogyavalkya, Parasha, and other liberated sages. And the enactments were all suitable for all ages and all places. Therefore the rules and regulations were standard and without flaw or defect. Kings like Maharaj Parikshit had their council of advisors, and all the members of the council were either great sages or Brahmins of the first order. They did not accept any salary, nor had they any necessity for such salaries. The state would get the best advice without expenditure. They were themselves Samadarshi, equal to everyone, both man and animal. They would not advise the king to be of protection to man and instruct him to kill the poor animals. Such council members were not fools or representatives to compose a fool's paradise. They were all self-realized souls, and they knew perfectly well how all living beings in the state would be happy, both in this life and in the next. They were not concerned with the hedonistic philosophy of eat, drink, be merry, and enjoy. They were philosophers in the real sense, and they knew well that what is the mission of human life. Under all these obligations, the advisory council of the king would give correct directions, and the king or executive head, being himself a qualified devotee of the Lord, would scrutinize and follow them for the welfare of the state. The state in the days of Maharaj Yudhishthir or Maharaj Parikshit was a welfare state in the real sense of the term, because no one was unhappy in that state, be he man or animal. Maharaj Parikshit was an ideal king for a welfare state of the world. You okay over there? You okay over there? Yeah, text 2. Translation. King Parikshit married the daughter of King Uttara and begot 4 sons, headed by Maharaj Janamejaya. Forward. Maharaj Uttara was the son of Virat and maternal uncle of Maharaj Parikshit. Iravati, being the daughter of Maharaj Uttara, was the cousin sister of Maharaj Parikshit, but cousin brothers and sisters were allowed to get married if they did not belong to the same gotra or family. In the Vedic system of marriage, the importance of the gotra or family was stressed. Arjuna also married Subhadra, although she was his maternal cousin sister. Janamejaya, one of the Rajarshi kings and famous son of Maharaj Parikshit. His mother's name was Iravati, or according to some, Madravati. Maharaj Janamejaya begot 2 sons of the names Nyatanika and Shankrukarna. He celebrated several sacrifices in the Kurukshetra pilgrimage site, and he had 3 younger brothers named Shuddhasen, Ugrasen, and Bhimasen II. He invaded Takshala, and he decided to avenge the unlawful curse upon his great father Maharaj Parikshit. He performed a great sacrifice called Sarpa Yogya to kill the race of serpents, including the Takshaka, which had bitten his father to death. On request from many influential demigods and sages, he had to change his decision to kill the race of snakes, but despite stopping the sacrifice, he satisfied everyone concerned in the sacrifice by rewarding them properly. In the ceremony, Mahamuni Vyasadeva also was present, and he personally narrated the history of the battle of Kurukshetra before the king. Later on, by the order of Vyasadeva, his disciple Vaishampayan narrated before the king the subject matter of Mahabharata. He was much affected by his great father's untimely death and was very anxious to see him again, and he expressed his desire before the great sage Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva also fulfilled his desire. His father was present before him, and he worshipped both his father and Vyasadeva with great respect and pomp. Being fully satisfied, he most munificently gave charities to the Brahmins present at the sacrifice. Text number 3. Translation. Maharaj Parikshit, after having selected Kripacharya for guidance as his spiritual master, performed 3 horse sacrifices on the banks of the Ganga. These were executed with sufficient rewards for the attendants, and at these sacrifices, even the common man could see demigods. It appears from this verse that interplanetary travel by the denizens of higher planets is easy. In many statements in Bhagavatam, we have observed that the demigods from heaven used to visit this earth to attend sacrifices performed by influential kings and emperors. Herein also we find that during the time of the horse sacrifice ceremony of Maharaj Parikshit, the demigods from other planets were visible even to the common man due to this sacrificial ceremony. The demigods are not generally visible to common men, as the Lord is not visible. But as the Lord, by his causeless mercy, descends to be visible to the common man, similarly, the demigods also become visible to the common man by their own grace. Although celestial beings are not visible to the naked eyes of the inhabitants of this earth, it was due to the influence of Maharaj Parikshit that the demigods also agreed to be visible. The kings used to spend lavishly during such sacrifices, as a cloud distributes rain. A cloud is nothing but another form of water, or, in other words, the waters of the earth transform into clouds. Similarly, the charity made by the kings in such sacrifices are but another form of the taxes collected from the citizens. But as the rains fall down very lavishly and appear to be more than necessary, the charity made by such kings also seems to be more than what the citizens need. Satisfied citizens will never organize agitation against the king, and thus there was no need in changing the monarchical state. Even for a king like Maharaj Parikshit, there was need of a spiritual master for guidance. Without such guidance, one cannot make progress in spiritual life. The spiritual master must be bona fide, and one who wants to have self-realization must approach and take shelter of a bona fide spiritual master to achieve real success. Text number 4. Once, when Maharaj Parikshit was on his way to conquer the world, he saw the master of Kali Yuga, who was lower than a Shudra, disguised as a king and hurting the legs of a cow and bull. The king at once caught hold of him to deal sufficient punishment. Hare Krishna. Kind of late.
Yeah, sorry.
It's alright.
No, listen.
What's the name here? Purport, Shri Prabhupada. The purpose of a king's going out to conquer the world is not for self-aggrandizement. Maharaj Parikshit went out to conquer the world after his ascendance to the throne, but this was not for the purpose of aggression on other states. He was the emperor of the world, and all small states were already under his regime. His purpose in going out was to see how things were going on in terms of the godly state. The king, being the representative of the Lord, has to execute the will of the Lord duly. There is no question of self-aggrandizement. Thus, as soon as Maharaj Parikshit saw that a lower class man in the dress of a king was hurting the legs of a cow and a bull, at once he arrested and punished him. The king cannot tolerate insults to the most important animal, the cow, nor can he tolerate disrespect for the most important man, the Brahmin. Human civilization means to advance the cause of Brahminical culture and to maintain it. cow protection is essential. There is a miracle in milk, for it contains all the necessary vitamins to sustain human physiological conditions for higher achievements. Brahminical culture can advance only when man is educated to develop the quality of goodness, and for this there is a prime necessity of food prepared with milk, fruits and grains. Maharaj Parikshit was astonished to see that a black Shudra, dressed like a ruler, was mistreating a cow, the most important animal in human society. The age of Kali means mismanagement and quarrel, and the root cause of all mismanagement and quarrel is that worthless men with the modes of lower class men who have no higher ambition in life come to the helm of the state management. Such men at the post of a king are sure to first hurt the cow and the Brahminical culture, thereby pushing all society towards hell. Maharaj Parikshit, trained as he was, got the scent of this root cause of all quarrel in the world, thus he wanted to stop it in the very beginning. Next, number 5. Shaunaka Rishi inquired, why did Maharaj Parikshit simply punish him, since he was the lowest of the Shudras, having dressed as a king and having struck a cow on the leg? Please describe all these incidents if they relate to the topics of Lord Krishna. Shaunaka and the rishis were astonished to hear that the pious Maharaj Parikshit simply punished the culprit and did not kill him. This suggests that a pious king like Maharaj Parikshit should have at once killed an offender who wanted to cheat the public by dressing like a king and at the same time daring to insult the purest of the animals, a cow. The rishis in those days, however, could not even imagine that in the advanced days of the age of Kali, the lowest of the Shudras will be elected as administrators and will open organised slaughterhouses for killing cows. Anyway, although hearing about a Shudra who was a cheat and insulter of a cow was not very interesting to the great rishis, they nevertheless wanted to hear about it to see if the event had any connection with Lord Krishna. They were simply interested in the topics of Lord Krishna, for anything that is dovetailed with the narration of Krishna is worth hearing. There are many topics in the Bhagavatam about sociology, politics, economics, cultural affairs, etc. But all of them are in relation to Krishna, and therefore all of them are worth hearing. Krishna is the purifying ingredient in all matters, regardless of what they are. In the mundane world, everything is impure due to its being a product of the three mundane qualities. The purifying agent, however, is Krishna. Did you get one? Good side.
No. Actually, the mic is on your face.
What can I do?
Yeah, it's fine for you. That's better.
So, text number 6. Translation. The devotees of the Lord are accustomed to licking up the honey available from the lotus feet of the Lord. What is the use of topics which simply waste one's valuable life? Poor Krishna. Lord Krishna and his devotees are both on the transcendental plane. Therefore, the topics of Lord Krishna and of his pure devotees are equally good. The battle of Kurukshetra is full of politics and diplomacy, but because the topics are related with Lord Krishna, the Bhagavad Gita is therefore adored all over the world. There is no need to politics, economics, sociology, etc., which are mundane to the mundaners. To a pure devotee who is actually related with the Lord, such mundane things are transcendental if dovetailed with the Lord or with his pure devotees. We have heard and talked about the activities of the Pandavas, and we now are dealing with the topics of Maharaj Parikshit. But because all these topics are related to the Lord Sri Krishna, they are all transcendental, and pure devotees have great interest in hearing them. We have already discussed this matter in connection with the prayers of Vishnudev. Our duration of life is not very long, and there is no certainty of when we shall be adored to leave everything for the next stage, or ordered to leave everything for the next stage. Thus it is our duty to see that not a moment of our life is wasted in topics which are not related with Lord Krishna. Any topic, however pleasing or however pleasant, is not worth hearing if it is devoid of its relation to Krishna. The spiritual planet, Goloka Vrindavan, the eternal abode of Krishna, is shaped like a whole of a lotus flower. Even when the Lord descends to any one of the mundane planets, he does so by manifesting his own abode as it is. Thus his feet remain always on the same big whirl of the lotus flower. His feet are always as beautiful as the lotus flower. Therefore it is said that Lord Krishna has lotus feet. A living being is eternal by constitution. He is, so to speak, in a whirlpool of birth and death due to his contact with material energy. Freed from such material energy, a living entity is liberated and is eligible to return home back to Godhead. Those who want to live forever without changing their material bodies should not waste valuable time with topics other than those relating to Lord Krishna and his devotees. Text 7. Translation. O Siddha Goswami, there are those amongst men who desire freedom from death and get eternal life. They escape the slaughtering process by calling the controller of death Yamaraj. The living entity, as he develops from lower animal life to a higher human being and gradually to higher intelligence, becomes anxious to get free from the clutches of death. Modern scientists try to avoid death by physiochemical advancement of knowledge, but alas, the controller of death, Yamaraj, is so cruel that he does not spare even the very life of the scientist himself. The scientist who puts forward the theory of stopping death by advancement of scientific knowledge becomes himself a victim of death when he is called by Yamaraj. Or to speak of stopping death, no one can enhance the short period of life even by a fraction of a moment. The only hope of suspending the cruel slaughtering process of Yamaraj is to call him to hear and chant the holy name of the Lord. Yamaraj is a great devotee of the Lord, and he likes to be invited to kirtans and sacrifices by the pure devotees, who are constantly engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. Thus the great sages, headed by Shaunaka and others, invited Yamaraj to attend the sacrifice performed at Naimisharanya. This was good for those who did not want to die. You should invite Yamaraj to our kirtans.
That's what I just thought. I didn't know he likes season.
All the bodies like kirtans. Text number 8. Translation. As long as Yamaraj, who causes everyone's death, is present here, no one shall meet with death. Great sages have invited the controller of death, Yamaraj, who is the representative of the Lord. Living beings who are under his grip should take advantage by hearing the deathless nectar in the form of his narration of the transcendental pastimes of the Lord. Every human being dislikes meeting death, but he does not know how to get rid of death. The surest remedy for avoiding death is to accustom oneself to hearing the nectarian pastimes of the Lord, as they are systematically narrated in the text of Srimad Bhagavatam. It is advised herein, therefore, that any human being who desires freedom from death should take to this course of life as recommended by the rishis, headed by Shaunaka. As we do. Make sure you get it. Text number 9. Translation. Lazy human beings with paltry intelligence and a short duration of life pass the night sleeping and the day performing activities that are from naught. The less intelligent do not know the real value of the human form of life. The human form is a special gift of material nature in the course of her enforcing stringent laws of miseries upon the living being. It is the chance to achieve the highest boon of life, namely to get out of the entanglement of repeated birth and death. The intelligent take care of this important gift by strenuously endeavouring to get out of the entanglement. But the less intelligent are lazy and unable to evaluate the gift from the human body to achieve liberation from the material bondage. They become more interested in so-called economic development and work very hard throughout life simply for the sense enjoyment of the temporary body. Sense enjoyment is also allowed to the lower animals by the law of nature, and thus a human being is also destined to a certain amount of sense enjoyment according to his past or present life. But one should definitely try to understand that sense enjoyment is not the ultimate goal of human life. Herein it is said that during the daytime one works for nothing, because the aim is nothing but sense enjoyment. We can particularly observe how the human being is engaged for nothing in the great cities and industrial towns. There are so many things manufactured by human energy, but they are all meant for sense enjoyment and not for getting out of material bondage. And after working hard during the daytime, a tired man either sleeps or engages in sex habits at night. That is the program of materialistic civilized life for the less intelligent. Therefore they are designated herein as lazy, unfortunate, and short-lived. And text number 10. Sudha Goswami said, while Maharaj Parikshit was residing in the capital of the Kuru Empire, the symptoms of the age of Kali began to infiltrate within the jurisdiction of his state. When he learned about this, he did not think the matter very palatable. This did, however, give him a chance to fight. He took up his bow and arrows and prepared himself for military activities. The state administration of Maharaj Parikshit was so perfect that he was sitting in his capital peacefully. But he got the news that the symptoms of the age of Kali had already infiltrated into the jurisdiction of his state, and he did not like the news. What are the symptoms of the age of Kali? They are 1. Illicit connection with women. 2. Indulgence in meat eating. 3. Intoxication. And 4. Taking pleasure in gambling. The age of Kali literally means the age of quarrel, and the above mentioned 4 symptoms in human society are the root causes for all kinds of quarrel. Maharaj Parikshit heard that some of the people of the state had already taken to those symptoms, and he wanted to take immediate steps against such causes of unrest. This means that at least up to the regime of Maharaj Parikshit, such symptoms of public life were practically unknown, and as soon as they were slightly detected, he wanted to root them out. The news was not palatable for him, but in a way it was, because Maharaj Parikshit got a chance to fight. There was no need to fight with small states, because everyone was peacefully under his subordination. But the Kali Yuga miscreants gave his fighting spirit a chance for exhibition. A perfect Kshatriya king is always jubilant as soon as he gets a chance to fight, just as a sportsman is eager when there is a chance for a sporting match. It is no argument that in the age of Kali such symptoms are predestined. If so, then why was their preparation for fighting out of such symptoms? Such arguments are offered by lazy and unfortunate men. In the rainy season, rain is predestined, and yet people take precautions to protect themselves. Similarly, in the age of Kali, the symptoms, as above mentioned, are sure to infiltrate into social life, but it is the duty of the state to save the citizens from the association of the agents of the age of Kali. Maharaj Parikshit wanted to punish the miscreants indulging in the symptoms of Kali, and thus save the innocent citizens who are pure in habit and culture of religion. It is the duty of the king to give such protection, and Maharaj Parikshit was perfectly right when he prepared himself to fight. today, I'm afraid. So we'll see you all here again tomorrow at 6:30. Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Srimad Bhagavatam ki. Hare Krishna.